What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be going over the operating instructions for the Sega Model 2 system. Now, I've made some changes recently and we're going to go over some of those changes and also just a general guide as to how to use the Model 2 system. So let's go ahead and go into it. So right off the bat, the gun games and the driving games are now playable from the Model 2 wheel. So it used to be that I incorporated the driving games and the gun games into their dedicated wheels, and of course those games are still there. So for your aim track users, the gun games will be over in the gun games wheel, and for you steering wheel people, the games will also be over in the driving games wheel, so that you can use your G29 from Logitech to play those games. But if you start the games from this menu now, you can play them with any of your keyboard encoders, so like your X Arcade or your extension or your iPacs, stuff like that. And that will be for driving games. Of course, you can play them with your Xbox controllers. And for your shooting games like House of the Dead and Virtual Cop, stuff like that, you can play them with either the Xbox controllers or your mouse, or if you have a trackball, that's a mouse as well. And let's start there. So for the trackball, you have your left and right click buttons normally, but they're kind of out of the way. So for that one, I've made it so the player one first two top row buttons are shoot and reload. So you can move the crosshairs with the trackball, and you can shoot and reload right from those player one buttons. So you don't have to reach to the side or some weird awkward position that you have your left and click position in your control panel. So that is the shooting games. Now for the driving games, just keep in mind that some games like Daytona, I think that might be the only one, Daytona USA, but there's like a few versions of that. Gas is going to be up on the joystick, brake is going to be down on the joystick, and then obviously left and right to move the steering wheel. And then you have, the rest of your buttons. And the reason I did that for that one is because you have 4 shifts, first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and some different views. And I didn't have enough buttons for everything. For most other driving games, your gas is going to be the middle button for player one top row, because then I make the left and the right buttons as gear down and gear up. But these are just things you obviously play with and figure out. So I'm just kind of giving you a quick little overview of how I went about configuring those. And if you're using an Xbox controller to play those driving games, I found that it works a little bit better when you make the selections in the menu. If you hold down the select button, which is usually going to be your gas, which is typically assigned to the right trigger. So let's say you're picking a car, instead of quickly pressing the trigger, just kind of press it and hold it for like a fraction of a second. Kind of works better that way. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Let me just start up 2 games here real quick. All right, let's try Daytona USA. Let's start that up. And I'm going to be trying this one with my X Arcade joystick. So I'm going to insert credit. And remember, I said this one, gas is up, and gas, if you look at the bottom, it's telling you that that's what you use to choose. So I'm going to press up on the joystick. And I'm going to go right to manual. Now you have to hold it to the right, like a steering wheel. So you hold it to the right, and while you're holding it, you press up. And that makes a selection. If you were using the Xbox controllers, that would be your right trigger that makes those selections. So yeah, this, I'm going to press up for gas. And there you go. All right, so let's go ahead and try a gun game now. Let's do House of the Dead. Start that up. And right now I'm moving my mouse around. You can use the trackball. I don't have a trackball on this one because I'm using the solo X-Arcade joystick, not the tank stick. But I'm gonna simulate a trackball with my mouse. So insert credit, and there you go. Reload is right button click. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's it, guys. It's pretty straightforward. Now, I do want to point something else out, and for that, we're going to go ahead and exit to Windows. So go back over here to the toolkit. And select exit to Windows. All right, so real quick, if you guys are using Xbox controllers, I'm going to recommend that you make the change that I'm about to show you. If you're using an extension, an X-Arcade, anything like that, but you also have Xbox controllers, I would also recommend this change. And what that is I've set up 2 emulators. So if you go over here, you open up a window, right? Like either this yellow folder here or start computer, whatever you want to do. You know, let me expand this. Go over here to emulators, and then you go down and you find Sega Model 2. There's a bunch, but ignore these. All you need is Sega Model 2 and Sega Model 2 Xbox. So I've configured 2 different ones, right? Because Sega Model 2 has built-in Xbox controllers support for X input. So, you know, any games that use analog inputs like Daytona USA or any of the other racing games, any of the Wave Runner games, stuff like that, you can configure directly in the emulator so that it takes X input, and that is going to be a lot more accurate than using keyboard keys and using XPadder to forward those keys using your controller. So basically what I suggest for you guys is, if you're using an Xbox controller, or again, if you have Xbox controllers, you know, in addition to your tank stick or extension or whatever, I would recommend that you come here, you know, select Sega Model 2, right click it, rename it. You can rename it anything you want, but I would do parentheses keyboard. All right, now you took that out of the equation, and then take Sega Model 2 parentheses Xbox and remove that whole part there till it's just Sega Model 2. Bam, and that's going to make it so that that is the default emulator now. And again, what that does is it has X input enabled for all of the analog controls. This doesn't affect every game. You know, the fighting games and stuff like that are not affected. Only the games that have analog inputs, like the driving games mostly. Now, the downside to this is that if you're using your X-Arcade joystick and you want to play those driving games, you're not going to be able to anymore. They're only going to work with the Xbox controller, but they're going to work better with the Xbox controller. The other way that I ship it, it's going to work for both the Xbox controller and the tank sticks, but it's going to suffer a little bit for the Xbox controller with the responsiveness of the controls because you're not using analog controls. All right, guys, so that is going to be it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.